The Seattle Kraken got a 3-1 win yesterday in preseason over the Vancouver Canucks, thanks to the Yanni Gourde line and 2 goals by Eeli Tolvanen. We're going to talk about that. Plus, what does Dave Haxtel have to say about the power play? The misunderstood power play, question mark? And I overheard a interesting scenario regarding forwards and defensemen and how maybe some young players might find their way up to the NHL sooner than we think. All of that coming up on this episode of Locked On Kraken.
You are Locked On Kraken, your daily podcast on the Seattle Kraken, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
We are the Seattle Kraken.
Happy Friday, Seattle hockey fans. Erica Ayala here, coming to you live once again from Kraken Community Iceplex. We're about an hour removed from the skate for today. The Seattle Kraken players were headed straight away from training camp to team building. We'll get into that a little bit, but first let's go over yesterday's game. It was the Vancouver Canucks in town. The Seattle Kraken took care of business, and in great part because of Eeli Tolvanen. And he would not get the first goal. That would belong to Jacob Melanson. But, gets on the board first for the Seattle Kraken. We were tied at 1 for a little bit there. But then Tolvanen with the final 2 goals, including a power play goal, which you love to see for the Seattle Kraken. Power play, I just want to remind you of what we were dealing with when it came to the power play last season. The Seattle Kraken last year were 21st in the league in power play and PK, a 19.8% clip on the power play, 76.7% clip on the PK, which I don't think are great numbers. They're obviously not the worst in the league, but I thought it was interesting that Dave Haxtel almost got a little defensive about specialty teams. Here is Dave Haxtel talking to media immediately after the Kraken game, and also making a reference to the M's game from last night at Climate Pledge Arena.
So you guys would all be watching the Mariners post game.
Dave, Yanni's line looked like it just picked up where it left off last season. What did you see from those three tonight?
Good. I mean, those guys have good chemistry. They enjoy playing together. They read off each other really well. First and third, they were together, and they've got some. They've still got work to do to get to regular season level. But you see the chemistry, and like I said, those guys like playing together.
The group as a whole seemed to really tilt the ice. What did you like from all of your lines and pairs?
Well, there's lots there to like for sure. You see when you lack a little bit of trust, and just you lack a little cohesion, you get in trouble. Getting out of the zone, getting up ice on transition. Right? As soon as you're a little bit slow, you allow a team that's going to forecheck hard to put you in tough spots. So those are some of the things that we have to clean up. But there was good parts of the game where we had good possession, generate a little bit, not as much as you might think. I think we go back and look at it, we're going to want to find a way to generate a little bit more, in terms of critical, good scoring chances. But it's a work in progress. That's game number 3. We're halfway or a little over halfway through camp. I think it's indicative that there's some good there, but we got more work to do.
Power play ended up being the difference maker tonight, which hasn't commonly been the case in seasons past. What do you feel was responsible for that success?
Yeah, we had our moments tonight. We've had good confidence in our power play, and our PP's caught a little bit of heat, and I think I'm honest with you, it's a little bit unfair. We went through too many stretches last year where we hit dry spells, and that's what can happen. That that tends to wane the confidence in the power play. It takes away the swagger of that group. and it's hard work to get that feel back. So that's really the one big thing, that, we'd like to see in our PP is always find a way to regain the momentum quickly. Tonight there was obviously, the goal that they did score, big goal, right? So lots of good pieces to it. We've had one day to work on it, so you're seeing new units, but we saw some good things out of it. Much like the rest of our game, we'll take the positives, but there's we've got a ways to go in order to get to the level that we need to be at and want to be at.
So there you have it. Dave Haxtel talking about a lot of different things, including a few different players. That should be a better focus. Question of the day. Do you agree with Dave Haxtel regarding the power play? He felt that it was a little bit misunderstood. I will tell you, I thought the swagger comment and the timeliness of the power play was interesting. But before I give you my thoughts, we'll talk about that next week. What are your thoughts? Question of the day. Should Dave Haxtel and the Seattle Kraken be a little bit more concerned regarding how the power play performed last season? Again, a 19.8% clip, 21st overall in the league. Let me know in the comments, and I will also let the subtext community know. But speaking of subtext, in subtext, you had access to, and I actually think I made this public accidentally, so it was public for a little bit, but the subtext community, you continually have access to my conversation with Justin Schultz. Now, in this offseason, I've talked about Justin Schultz. Is he going to be a player that we see stick around? I liked what he was able to do for Seattle. But while I was in the stands at practice today, I was talking to a few other members of the media corps. I'm not going to say who they were because, we were just kind of casually speaking. But in that conversation, something got brought to my attention that I wanted to talk about on the podcast. And it might not bode well for Schultz or Alex Wenberg, depending on how a few players perform for the rest of training camp. I'll also let you know the total recall part 2, as I'm calling it. We do have a handful of players that have been reassigned to Coachella Valley. I know I said this was going to be a Firebirds Friday, but I'm bumping some of that conversation because this next segment is going to be an interesting one. And I know I gave you a question of the day about the power play, but I would love to hear your comments regarding what I'm about to drop regarding Justin Schultz and Alex Wenberg. That's coming up on this episode of Locked On Kraken. Today's episode of Locked On Kraken brought to you by DoorDash. Now, DoorDash is a grocery delivery service where you can get what you want right when you need it. You can also, find different restaurants in the area that will deliver right to your door. And as someone who travels a lot, I love using things like DoorDash and things of that nature, whether I'm cooking for myself or I just want a ready-made meal. With thousands of grocery stores to choose from, you'll find the best in your neighborhood, and boost the local economy with each and every order. So if you head to the DoorDash app, download that sucker, and use promo code LOCKED, you will get 50% off, 50% off your first DoorDash order, up to $20. That's right, 50% off your first order using the DoorDash app when you use promo code LOCKED. Limited time offer, and some terms do apply. But again, 50% off up to $20 when you use DoorDash. Don't forget, that's code LOCKED for 50% off your first order with DoorDash. And I hope you find it as handy as I do, as someone who's always on the road. Thank you, as always, for making Locked On Kraken a part of your daily destination. The Locked On Kraken podcast, of course, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Erica L. Ayala. I've been your host since the very beginning, coming to you live from Kraken Community Iceplex on my little perch here rink number 2. Got the team store behind me. And I told you yesterday I will be wearing this jacket for the end of all time for as much as I paid for it. But Mike Benton from the Kraken Radio Network and I were twinning it up. His fit's a little bit more mine is a little big, I'll say it that way. Although I kind of like the big fit, but his seemed like a perfect fit, almost like it was tailored for him. Mike Benton, thanks for the recommendation. This thing has been keeping me warm while I've been here at the ice rink, but also just in the changing of seasons here in the Pacific Northwest. But speaking of Mike Benton, Everett Fitzhugh. Today we had Ryan S. Clark sitting with us in the reserved media section. RJ from Emerald City Hockey. Scott was there today, and shout out to Scott and his family. They're expecting another child very soon. Got to catch up with him. Darren was there. I mean, we all hang out with JT, Allison, everyone. We all kind of sit together. John Forsland, Nickel, check Eddie when he's in town. And today, a part of that group, and again, like I said, I'm not going to put the names out there just because it was a casual conversation. But in this casual conversation, of course, we're all looking at what's happening on the ice. We're looking at what happened in the game that we previewed in the first segment, and we're trying to figure out what is the best version of this Seattle Kraken team. And some of that might be to the disservice of the Coachella Valley Firebirds. A lot of people liked Ryker's game. You heard from Dave Haxtel. He said he thinks that he probably had some of the most significant minutes last night. And he's right. The only person on the defensive side that had more time on ice than Ryker Evans, if you can see here at 22-16, 22-38, who is that? Jamie Alexiak. Who was Ryker's defensive partner? Alexiak. You also heard Dave Haxtel talk about Ryker playing on his offside. So for him to make a significant impact, to stand out, and it wasn't just Dave who talked about him last night, but again, in our little media perch, a lot of people talking about Ryker. I thought it was serviceable. I think there were a few of us who were maybe not all in on his performance, but definitely stood out, and not in a bad way. Melanson stood out to me. You also heard Dave Haxtel talk about that. We're going to talk about Melanson in the next segment a little bit. Teaser, spoiler alert. Shane Wright also stood out to me. And it wasn't a perfect performance, but it was certainly an improved performance. And we're going to talk about Shane Wright and Ryker Evans in their relation, perhaps, to Justin Schultz and Alex Wenberg. But before I give you kind of that breakdown and the conversation we were having today in the media perch, let's hear from Shane Wright. And if you follow Locked On Kraken or me or Black Rosie Media on social media, then you probably saw a little bit of this snippet from my perspective. But here is Shane Wright talking about some of the young guys and also some things that he wants to continue to improve. I thought Shane Wright had a solid performance. But again, we'll talk about him a little bit after you hear from him from last night's game.
Shane, your line was buzzing pretty good tonight. What did you see out there with those guys?
Yeah, obviously, fun night for us. We think we just competed, just won our battles, and try to play in the ozone as much as possible. And I think that was kind of our idea going into the game. Just put the puck behind their D, play in their end, and happy with how we played tonight.
You've gotten to know Melanson a little bit. It's pretty cool to see him get that goal tonight.
Yeah, obviously it's awesome for him to get that goal. You see, he's a hardworking guy. He's earned that. So it's great for him. Great to see him score that one.
And did you know he was there when you made that pass to him, or were you just kind of hoping he was there?
No, I saw him there. Yeah, when I got the rebound, I kind of saw him out of the corner of my eye coming in backdoor, so slid over to him there.
Among the many things I'm sure you've been working on in training camp, how goes? Is this a good time to think about face-off work against some bigger, experienced guys? For sure. Yeah, I think that's definitely something I got to clean up, got to work on. Definitely look at some video and clips on that. But obviously going against guys like JT Miller and really strong, really
experienced veteran centerman like that. It's always going to, make me better, always going to challenge me. So definitely something I think look to improve on, but always, looking to get better.
So that's Shane Wright talking about a lot of things, and he ends that clip talking about face-offs. I'm going to get to that in a little bit, but talked about his line. He was playing with Jacob Mellinson, who did score, and he was playing also with Shore. And I Shore didn't stand out to me, certainly not in a bad way. I think there were little things here that he did, Devin Shore, that I liked. Again, there were some things that I would have liked Shane Wright to be better at, face-offs being one of them. I'll get to that in a minute. But I think Ty Cartier and Shane Wright from time to time, even Kyler Yamamoto, their youth was shown in just kind of how they were roughed up a little bit, and not anything significant. They popped right back up and were able to maneuver through some of the physicality. But it's something that I talked about even in the run to the playoffs, or the playoff run last season, where that was how Colorado and Dallas looked to disrupt Matty Beniers and even Jared McCann by throwing some more physicality at them. So the one thing I will say, and Dave Haxtel also said this in the first clip that I played for you in the first segment, that Mellinson is the kind of player that, you're going to know that he's out there, and he is not to be trifled with. So that's what I liked about him, but that's a little bit of a moot point, at least for this season. Again, we'll talk about that in the coming segment. But the reason I wanted to bump the conversation on the Firebirds Friday, I spoke to Dan Bilesma and Jessica Campbell. We'll hear from them probably sometime next week. And my exclusive one-on-one conversations with them is because Shane Wright talking about face-offs got me thinking about centermen. Shane Wright has been better this year. And then again, the conversation that we had in the bleachers, does Shane Wright make this team? Does he make it out of training camp? Is he one of the first called up? Same thing with Ryker Evans. Where do they fit? And then someone mentioned that we might want to take a look at players who maybe aren't the greatest fit. And I'm going to start with faceoffs because Shane Wright talked about it. Shane Wright, he was 22% on his faceoff chances last night. There was only one player that had less a smaller percentage of face-off wins, and that was Yanni Gourde at 18%. Now, granted, I want to take a look at how many face-offs they actually received each. Again, I'm still getting used to the new NHL site, so I'll do a little bit of that math, and maybe we'll talk about it next week. But let's just go on percentages because we can maneuver that. So Yanni Gourde at an 18% clip, Wright at a 22% clip. Next was Wenberg at a 30% clip. Remember that, Alexander Wenberg at 30% clip. Then we had Devin Shore, the aforementioned, at a 50% clip. And again, how many faceoffs did he take? Again, I'll have to do some of the math. I'm just not as familiar with how they're doing the stats this year. And then the most faceoff wins, and I love this, was from Pierre-Edouard Bellemare, 80%. He won 80% of his faceoffs. So I wanted to talk about faceoffs because that's where Shane Wright said he wanted to improve. It's also something that, again, kind of in our little media group, Dave Haxtel's been talking about the issues with sometimes special teams is that or just overall with possession, is that the team might win a faceoff, but then the puck gets shot right out of the zone and to apparently no one. And I was kind of doing my own little, I was practicing, I should say, play by play, and I didn't record it or anything, which now I wish I would have, because there was a time in last night's game where the puck wasn't moving well. It was very dump and chase for both sides. And then it was the Gourde line with Tolvanen and Bjorkstrand. Let me just double check that. Yes. Tolvanen and Bjorkstrand, who obviously Ellie Tolvanen gets 2 goals, 1 on the power play, but they started bringing back some chemistry, some coordination, some actual puck possession and passing. But other than that, it was very dump and chase. And you heard Dave Haxtel kind of allude to that those are some of the mistakes, or when you take your foot off the gas. But anyway, so the conversation, I know I'm stringing you along here. The conversation that we had today in the bleachers was, is there room right on this team? General consensus was no right now, because then who do you take off? But then it was mentioned that perhaps if we look at faceoffs, if we look at shots on goal, which is a bugaboo for Wenberg, we had 2 shots on goal. Shane Wright also 2 shots. At least that's what the stats are saying. Do you want a young guy who can grow into being better at faceoffs, who can grow into taking shots at center, or do you want a center now who's great at moving the puck but doesn't shoot very often and isn't the most prolific faceoff winner, certainly not on the team, and perhaps you could find something better in the National Hockey League? So this is another question for us to think about. Do we like the idea of maybe trading Alex Wenberg to make room for Shane Wright? And then on the defensive side of things, again, if you're a part of the subtext community, you heard me talk to Justin Schultz. I like Justin Schultz, but when you have Ryker Evans, do you keep him in the AHL, or do you bring this guy up and see what he can do? And when we're talking about this, my big question, and I asked this of the group, is I get the thought process behind moving Wenberg and Schultz to make room for Evans and Wright. I get that. It's very tempting. But similarly to what we did as like my basic quick math, when we lost our 4th line, did we bring in enough to get the goals and the points that they had and then some? If we move Evans and Wright up and take away Wenberg and Schultz, who I thought was great for us early on in the season and then even early on in the playoffs, do we have enough guys that we think, including Evans and or Wright, that can give us what we lose when we don't have that? And this is why I am not a general manager. I am a podcaster, and all I do is pontificate. Not all I do, but I want to bring you these questions because these are the types of things that are happening right now for the Seattle Kraken. But speaking of that, we did get some moves and some reassignments, so that's what's coming up next on Locked On Kraken. Hey, thanks as always for making Locked On Kraken a part of your daily destination. Erica L. Ayala here, your host, coming to you live from Kraken Community Iceplex. We're going to close out today. The guys have about 24 hours where they're doing team building. I asked Dave Haxtel a little bit about that. This is something coming from the players. You know, they got on a bus together. It sounded like maybe they're going on a golfing trip, but they're just going to have some time to spend together. It's not necessarily something that's going to be a part of the evaluation process, or that's what Dave Haxtel, when I asked him today, kind of alluded to, but I can imagine it's certainly something that's in the back of the mind. And when you have a player like Pierre-Edouard Bellemare, who has immediately shown his upside when it comes to leadership, I can't imagine that it won't be something, if all other things are equal, that doesn't come up to sway something one way or another. So we'll just have to see how that goes. But I'm glad the guys are getting a chance to get away from the ice. It's sunny here, at least today in the Pacific Northwest. So hopefully they have a good time. But not everyone will be on that team building trip because we have some other recalls. That's right. Total Recall here. Seattle Kraken have reassigned. I know I keep using Recall. That's because it's a movie. I think they're doing a remake, right? Or did they already do it? Or maybe they're doing another remake. Anyway, I'm thinking of Total Recall with Arnold Schwarzenegger. Yeah. Anyway, here are the reassignments. The Seattle Kraken have reassigned the following players to Coachella Valley. We've got LaFontaine, Melanson, who scored last night, Morrison. We've got Ottavainen, Robertson, and Winterton, all headed back to Coachella Valley. And again, another conversation that we had is that there's a lot of upside in Coachella Valley. We saw what they did last year. And again, when I do give you the conversation that I had with Dan in particular, but also Jessica, there's this balancing act, almost this tightrope walk that coaching staff has that is very unique. They're building up players, and if we're being honest, the ultimate goal is for them to be in the National Hockey League, but that does impact the here and now. Whereas with Dave Haxtel, his vantage point is a little bit different, and he's always receiving the talent and sometimes has to make decisions perhaps in net, if you will, to send guys down. But then also, do you lose them on waivers? Do you gain them on waivers? Like Ellie Tolvanen, who I want to spend some time talking about Ellie next week. Because he's just been having so much fun. Oh my gosh. Yeah, you scored 2 goals, you're going to be loose. But he's been a delight. He's having a good time, and you love to see it. But this is the tough part, right, of the job. And so we have a few guys that, they're just being reassigned. The team, the coaching staff, I should say, saw what they needed to see, at least for now, and feels that they'll be well suited with the Coachella Valley Firebirds. But again, next week I want to talk a little bit more about, because there is symmetry there. It's sometimes hard to manage that symmetry, but it does exist. So we'll talk about that a little bit more. But I don't know. Do you make room for Shane Wright and get rid of Wenberg or someone else? But I mean, you're not getting rid of Beniers. I don't think you should get rid of Belmar. I don't think you're getting rid of Yanni Gord. So, and then regarding Justin Schultz, he's an unrestricted free agent. I don't think you necessarily have to get rid of him this season, and I wouldn't advocate for that. I've said that on the podcast before. But do you give him an extension? Do you kind of ask him throughout the season, does he want to be here? How much do you need to still see from Ryker Evans, if anything at all? These are tough questions. Tough questions and tough decisions to make. And I will be here at training camp. Dave Haxtel has continued to indicate that there is plenty of time. I don't want to say plenty of time, but there is still time. And it sounds like the Seattle Kraken and the Coachella Firebirds staff intend to use as much time as possible to make the best decisions possible for both organizations, chief among them, of course, the Seattle Kraken, looking to see if they can at least match, if not best, their second round playoff appearance. It's getting good, folks. That's why I wanted to prioritize being here in Seattle. Thank you so much for those who are supportive. We've been growing the subtext community. And so some of this stuff that I talk about on the podcast, if you want more detail, that's what you're going to get pretty soon. I'm here collecting interviews for you. I'm collecting information and intel, talking to other writers, people from the organization. And then the next few months is me taking these notes and applying them to what we see in the regular season. So if this is what you like, if you want to do all access, Ask Me Anything, which we'll do those once a month, but also you can do that immediately with subtext, because it is basically a text messaging service, and you have direct access to me through the number 918-731-3154. For anyone asking, 918 is a Tulsa number. I figured you probably, if you're an everydayer or OGer, you know that I live in Tulsa, at least for now. And so then you can equate that number to me. So again, that's 918-731-3154. There's also a link in the show notes, and it'll be up there. I think there are a few times maybe it wasn't, but the link should be in the show notes, whether you're watching on YouTube, hi YouTubers, or listening on audio. But that's going to do it. I might have a little bone episode for you tomorrow. Again, the guys are doing team building, so we won't have any sessions. We'll hit the ice again. The Seattle Kraken will on Sunday, but maybe a little bonus material, because I do have some interviews I'm sitting on that I am dying to dig into. So You know what I'm going to say? Be kind to yourselves. Be kind to each other. Hopefully have a relaxing weekend. Again, for Scott and your family, we're wishing you the best of luck and that you have a happy and healthy second child coming on the way. And then what we do, always loud and proud, hold fast, stay true, and let's go Kraken. I'll see you on the next episode. Peace.